Everyone thought she was just the dishwasher, a quiet shadow behind the kitchen doors of a five-star restaurant, sleeves rolled up, hands soaked in the scent of soap and steam. But that night, when the pianist didn't show and the grand piano sat silent in the center of the dining hall, they told her to play, like it was some kind of joke. And then, the most powerful room in the city forgot how to breathe. And before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. Just drop your city in the comments below. If this story speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Celeste Rivera stepped into the back kitchen of La Lumière, far from the warm, golden lights of the dining room that never reached this side of the restaurant. The air was thick with the scent of burnt butter, steam, and human sweat, clinging to her skin and her neatly tied hair like a second layer of grime. Her once white shirt had faded to a dull cream, her apron stained, and her hands roughened by soap and scouring pads. All the things the upscale guests never saw behind the heavy stainless steel doors that separated the glamour from the grind. At 32, Celeste had become part of the background, just another piece of kitchen equipment, like the dishwasher that rattled all night or the scratched metal trays she polished clean during every shift. To Chef Alain, who barked orders in a sharp blend of French and arrogance, she wasn't Celeste. She was, "Hey you," she was, "Clean this mess." She was out of the way. But when the knives stopped clanging and the last tips were counted, that's when Celeste truly arrived. Not with a mop, but with hands that knew how to sing. At the far end of the private dining hall, reserved for the city's elite, stood a glossy black Yamaha grand piano. It was more ornament than instrument, occasionally played by hired jazz musicians to add ambience to foie gras and burgundy wine. But late at night, when the lights dimmed and silence settled like dust, Celeste would return. She'd remove her rubber gloves like a ritual, sit down quietly at the keys, and let her heart speak. Her hands, worn from bleach and boiling water, moved across the keys with the grace of someone who had never truly left the music behind. Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the empty room, soft, haunting, and full of everything she'd never had the words to say. Memories of her final year at Manhattan School of Music came flooding back, before everything fell apart when her mother was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. No one at La Lumière knew she had once been a concert pianist in training. To people like Chef Alain or the front-of-house manager Claire, she was just another immigrant with a last name like Rivera, someone who didn't belong in a place built for luxury and perfection. Celeste never corrected them. Some wounds stay cleaner when left untouched, and sometimes a few stolen minutes of music after midnight are enough to keep a heart from breaking. Only one person knew. Maria, a young waitress new to the team. She had forgotten her phone one night, walked in by accident, and froze in the doorway as Celeste played. Tears had welled up in her eyes, but she never spoke a word about it. Since then, every time their eyes met, Maria simply gave her a quiet nod, as if to say thank you, without saying anything at all. Tonight was no different. The shift had ended. Celeste shut down the dish machine, hung her apron on the hook, and made her way toward the piano like she always did. There was no one waiting for her at home. Her mother had passed away 4 years ago. Her tiny apartment in the Bronx held nothing but a broken upright piano with 3 missing keys. But here, in this cold banquet hall, under a single dim light, she could still be herself. She sat down, took a deep breath, and began to play Chopin's Nocturne. Not for anyone else, just for her soul. That afternoon, La Lumière felt less like a restaurant and more like a stage, set for the city's most powerful. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow across cream-colored walls, glinting off polished silverware aligned with military precision. Each table corner was delicately dusted with white orchids, fragrant, elegant, and strangely cold. It was the scent of a world where people like Celeste Rivera didn't belong. She moved quietly across the dining hall, a basket of soiled napkins in her arms. No crisp black and white server uniform for her, just a faded beige blouse with frayed cuffs and a pair of worn jeans hidden beneath a grease-stained apron. Her steps made no sound, but her eyes, her deep brown eyes, still carried light. Not the light of someone seen, but of someone who had survived. Across the room, Claire, the VIP event manager, barked instructions with a voice sharp enough to slice glass. Chair at table 3 is off by an inch. And who folded the napkins like that? They're upside down. Claire stood tall, slim, with platinum hair pinned in place like a 1960s Hollywood starlet. Her lipstick was the color of vintage wine, but her eyes... those eyes could freeze fire. She spotted Celeste. "Rivera," Claire called, not loudly but sharply enough to stop anyone in earshot. "Done in the kitchen yet? Don't scuff the floors. We're hosting heads of state tonight. Let's not have anything unexpected on display." Celeste paused, nodded slightly. "Yes, ma'am." She was used to it. That look, that tone, the way they saw only the uniform, the stains, the calloused hands. As if she were part of the garbage bins out back instead of a person with a beating heart and music stitched into her bones. Tonight's event wasn't just another dinner service. A billionaire had rented the space for his wife's birthday. A guest list full of power players from Forbes and Washington. Live music had been planned. Specifically, a performance of Rhapsody in Blue on the Steinway grand piano set in the center of the room. Celeste knew that piece. She had performed it once when she was 19. It was the last time she ever played for an audience, before her mother collapsed on the bathroom floor and her life took a different path. At 7:18 p.m., just as the first glasses of champagne were poured and the amber light settled across the room like a velvet curtain, Claire's phone rang. "Hello? What? The car flipped? A broken arm?" Her face froze, as if a pane of glass had just shattered behind her eyes. The color drained beneath her makeup, leaving only that sharp slash of red lipstick. "He's not coming," she whispered to Chef Alain nearby. Then, turning to the staff, "Jefferson, the pianist was in an accident on the way here, his arm's broken. We don't have a replacement." The kitchen fell into a stunned silence. The sound of knives and pans ceased, like a symphony cut off mid-note. Everyone looked around, waiting, uncertain. Then, unexpectedly, a voice broke the stillness. "I know." A streak of flour was still on her cheek. Sweat clung to her brow. But in her eyes, for the first time in years, there was fire. "It is," she said softly, clear as a first note on an empty stage. The ballroom buzzed with soft conversation, the gentle clink of champagne flutes, the occasional polite laughter drifting through gold-lit air like false notes in a polished symphony. Men in sleek black tuxedos, women in gowns that shimmered like starlight. They sat atop plush red velvet chairs, glasses in hand, heads tilted in quiet anticipation, awaiting a piano performance from the acclaimed Jefferson. Unbeknownst to them, he was now lying in a hospital ER with a fractured arm. Backstage, behind the velvet curtain, Celeste Rivera had never felt smaller. She was still in her kitchen clothes, minus the apron, but everything else remained. Rolled-up sleeves, scuffed black sneakers, a small tear at the knee of her pants. Her name tag still read, C. Rivera, kitchen assistant. The spotlight hit her face like a slap, so blinding she had to squint. She could hear the shuffle of chairs, the murmurs. Who is she? Isn't that the dishwasher? Is this serious? She didn't look at them. She didn't need to. She kept her eyes locked on the Steinway Grand at center stage, gleaming like an old friend she hadn't seen in years. She sat down. Her fingers hovered above the keys, cold, icy cold. She inhaled deeply, just like she used to during those midnight moments alone, playing the dusty Yamaha in the empty banquet hall, long after the dishes were done. She closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids she saw her mother, frail, cradling a teacup, sitting quietly in the corner as Celeste practiced. "You don't have to be the best," her mother used to say. "Just play like it's the last gift you'll ever give the world." Celeste opened her eyes and began to play. The first note of Rhapsody in Blue hung in the air, slow, steady, like the first breath after a long sleep. Silence fell over the ballroom. No whispers, no movement. Champagne flutes hung suspended mid-air, forgotten. All eyes locked on the small woman at the piano, her face calm, but her gaze ablaze. Her fingers moved not with flash, but with story, with soul. Every phrase a sentence, every crescendo a memory whispered in sound. She forgot the room, forgot the lights, forgot the eyes that once looked through her. All that remained was the music, the truest voice she'd ever had. In the front row, a silver-haired conductor, once the maestro of Carnegie Hall, leaned forward, breath held. In the back, Maria stood frozen, her eyes glassy with tears, and Claire stood behind the curtain, her arms crossed tight, but her face no longer smug, her knuckles white, her jaw set, not with arrogance, but with something closer to fear. As Celeste struck the final thunderous chord, like a storm breaking through still skies. She held her hands on the keys a moment longer, one breath, one pause. Then she let go. Silence. One beat, 2, 3, and then the room exploded in applause. Not polite applause, not obligatory claps, real applause. Thunderous, relentless, the kind of applause reserved for miracles. Celeste Rivera remained seated, hands resting lightly on her knees, her breathing calm but deep, as if she were trying to hold her heart in place just a little longer. The stage lights poured down on her cheekbones, catching each bead of sweat as it traced its way along her neck. She didn't look up at the crowd, not yet. The final notes of Rhapsody in Blue still echoed in her mind like an aftershock refusing to fade. And then the applause broke loose, a thunderous wave, long, relentless. Cries of "Bravo!" rang out from both sides of the room. People who had once sipped their wine in silence now leapt to their feet, their faces lit up like they'd just witnessed something rare, something real, in a world too often wrapped in polish and pretense. Celeste slowly rose to her feet and bowed. Her eyes widened slightly, as if even she wasn't quite sure this was real. Years of being invisible. Years of scrubbing grease from kitchen tiles under flickering fluorescent lights. Years of whispered put-downs. All of it dissolved in that applause. From the front row, an older man with silver hair stepped onto the stage, a well-known conductor. He extended his hand. "Where did you study?" he asked. Not with doubt, but with pure wonder. Celeste looked at him, guarded for a moment, then softly replied, "I studied at Manhattan School of Music, but I left to care for my mother." He nodded, eyes kind. "No matter the reason, you still carry music in your blood." Offstage, Claire stood frozen. The practiced smile that usually lived on her face had vanished, replaced with something else. Something she couldn't quite name. Uncertainty, maybe, or disbelief. She had never imagined a dishwasher could make the entire room rise to their feet. Claire clenched her hands, trying to regain control. Then came another woman, draped in deep purple velvet, pearls around her neck, elegance in every gesture. "My dear," she said, "I'm Elise Laurin, lead patron of the Chicago Symphony. You made me cry tonight. It's been years since I heard music that moved me like that. Do you have a representative?" Celeste shook her head quietly. A gentle hand touched her shoulder from behind. It was Mariah, the young waitress. Eyes red, cheeks glowing. "I told you," she whispered, "they'd see who you really are." Celeste gave her hand a quiet squeeze. No words needed. Then came Simon Wexler, the city's most feared music critic, said to be harsher than Chopin himself. He was tall, stern, with round glasses that looked like they could see through your soul. "I didn't know your name until tonight," he said, voice low and even, "but tomorrow morning, Celeste Rivera will be the first words in my column. And that's not something I say lightly." As the evening wound down, no one was talking about wine pairings or the rosemary-glazed salmon. They were whispering about the woman with flower on her cheek and music in her bones. Some called her a hidden gem. Others said she was a genius lost in plain sight, like a diamond that had been buried just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to look closer. Celeste left the restaurant at 1 a.m., a soft coat draped over her shoulders, offered by Elise. The night air was cool, but it didn't sting the way it used to. Her steps were light, but steady. She knew life wouldn't change overnight, There are no fairy tales that simple. But something had shifted. The world had started listening, and when music speaks, not even the tallest walls can keep the heart from hearing. 3 weeks after that unforgettable night, the name Celeste Rivera began appearing in places she never imagined: the arts and culture section of the New York Times, morning talk shows, even on the Wall of Honor inside La Lumiere. The same restaurant where she once scrubbed floors in silence, but Celeste didn't live in the haze of sudden fame. She turned down most invitations to glitzy galas and high society performances. "I don't play music to be seen," she said in a short TV interview. "I play to be heard." A simple sentence, yet it spread across social media like wildfire, striking a chord in a world obsessed with image. One Friday afternoon, Celeste received a phone call from the City Music Conservatory, where she had once studied, before leaving to care for her sick mother. The voice on the other end was calm but resolute. It was Clara Doyle, the new director. "I've followed your story," Clara said, "and I believe you're the right person to lead our new community outreach program, teaching music to kids from under-resourced neighborhoods. Many of them won't get the chance to study formally, but they might carry a gift, just like you once did." Celeste was quiet for a moment. She thought of her mother, the tiny fourth-floor apartment with the damp walls, the way her mother used to tap a spoon against a glass to help her keep rhythm, the faint smile that lingered, even as illness dimmed her eyes, each time she heard Celeste play Chopin. "Yes," she said softly, "I'd be honored." 1 month later, Celeste stood inside a small room at a community center in Southside Chicago. The walls were patchy with peeling paint. The wooden floor creaked. The upright piano was old, 1 key stuck, 3 slightly out of tune. But to Celeste, this space was just as sacred as any concert hall. In front of her sat 8 children. Different faces, different stories. Some wore worn-out hoodies, others looked as if they'd just cried, but all of them carried the same look in their eyes. Curiosity, a flicker of hope waiting to be recognized. Celeste sat at the piano, her calloused fingers resting on the keys, scars of a journey that no sheet music could capture. She played a soft run of notes, then looked up at the class. "Every one of you has a song inside," she said. "Most people won't hear it, but you'll learn to feel it." She saw herself in their eyes, that same 19-year-old Celeste, yearning to be heard, to be believed in, to live true to what she loved. In the weeks that followed, she didn't teach from a textbook. She taught from memory, from emotion, from the place where music is not just sound, but story. One afternoon, as class wrapped up, a thin boy with tight curls and tattered shoes stayed behind. He clutched a battered harmonica to his chest and walked slowly toward her. "Miss Celeste," he said softly, "they told me I couldn't learn music, 'cause we don't have money, 'cause I'm not smart. But when you played on TV, my mum cried. First time I ever saw her cry, because she was happy." Celeste knelt down, her eyes stinging. "What's your name?" "Isaiah," she smiled. "Well, Isaiah. You don't need anyone's permission to be an artist. You just need to believe your music deserves to be heard." Isaiah nodded and turned to leave, flashing a small smile, the kind that glowed like the first note in a symphony yet to be written. Celeste watched him go, warmth blooming in her chest. Outside, the wind still blew. The skies remained grey. But in that weathered room, music had found a new home. And she, Celeste Rivera, had found herself again. Not through applause, but in the eyes of those the world had long forgotten. Celeste Rivera no longer washes dishes. But if you happen to walk past a small community center on the south side of the city, any Friday afternoon, you'll find her there, sitting at an old piano, hair tied back, hands dusted with chalk, eyes glowing, and around her a circle of children, like notes waiting to be written into the next great song. Because in this world, sometimes the most beautiful things come from the places no one ever thinks to look. Celeste's story isn't some polished fairy tale. She didn't become a celebrity. She didn't land $1 million contract. But she did something far more powerful. She turned pain into empathy. She turned music into a bridge between the forgotten and the dreams they thought they had lost. In today's world, where success is often measured in likes, followers, and picture-perfect resumes, Celeste's journey is a quiet reminder. Real talent doesn't need a spotlight. It only needs a heart brave enough to let it speak. How many Celestes are out there right now? How many gifted hands are washing dishes, sweeping floors, doing the work we overlook? How many dreams lie sleeping, just waiting for someone to look a little closer? Maybe if we stop judging people by their title, their uniform, or how they make a living, and instead start listening, truly listening, we'll discover that some of the most extraordinary stories come from the most ordinary places. Never underestimate anyone. The server you meet today could be an artist, an inventor, or someone who changes lives tomorrow. Believe in your own worth, even when no one else does. It doesn't come from degrees or praise, but from staying true to what you love. Give someone a chance. Sometimes the greatest thing you can offer is a moment. Just one. To let their light shine. Talent doesn't belong only to the wealthy or well-known. It lives in quiet apartments, in calloused hands, in those who keep showing up for their dreams, even when no one's watching. Maybe you know a Celeste. Or maybe you are one. If this story reminded you of someone or something you've carried quietly, share it in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it. And if this moved you, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story that dares to look beneath the surface.